the production capacity of India is one of the best assets the world has today, and I hope the world understands that it must be fully used.
You're watching Talking Point on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi. Let me welcome on StratNews Global for the first time and not for the last time, Ambassador Manjeev Singh Puri, India's ex-envoy to Nepal, the European Union, Belgium, Luxembourg. He was the Deputy Permanent Representative at the UN as well. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your time.
Thank you, Amitabh.
Ambassador, just an overview, if you can give us, of how India has moved its vaccine Maitri diplomacy. It's now the focus may be on that, but all through this year and more than that, during the pandemic, we've been helping other countries in our neighborhood, in our extended neighborhood, continuously.
Amitabh, what an incredible moment for someone like me who has spent his entire life in Indian diplomacy and the Foreign Service, to see the UN Secretary General saying that the greatest asset in the world is India's production capacity for vaccines. The COVID pandemic is something that perhaps none of us in our generation thought could ever happen. Indeed, the last time something like this happened was about 100 years back. It has brought the world to a grinding halt. And what has India's response been? Right from the word go, whatever was known in terms of the medical science, etc., we stood up there for ourselves and for the world. If you remember, even a country as robust in its economy and industrial capacity as the United States wanted hydroxychloroquine sent from India. And we have not found ourselves wanting. Whether it has been hydroxychloroquine, whether it has been remdesivir, and whether it has been PPEs, which were hugely in demand and which we ourselves were importing when things started. We ramped up our capabilities and we are there. Now, as we come to the phase of vaccines, the fact that we have the largest vaccine capacity in India certainly is good. But more important is our willingness to put this to the service of humanity. I think this is India, a great force for good in the world. I'm very proud.
Great force. We're all very proud, Ambassador. Great force for the world, as even the President told both houses of Parliament. If you just look at the immediate neighborhood, and of course, your vast experience has been in Nepal. And, there was tension between New Delhi and Kathmandu over the last year or more on that. But irrespective of what the relations are in the neighborhood, there has been no discrimination in that sense.
No, and this has always been India's policies. You know, politics, intergovernmental plays go on, but India has in its neighborhoods people's ties. And we have always been in the forefront of doing what we can when our neighbors need it. You're talking about Nepal. Remember the earthquake. When it happened, we were not just the first responders, we were by far the largest responders. And we have never looked back. We've been big in terms of what we could do in terms of relief, immediate relief and rescue. We've been big in terms of what we can do in terms of rehabilitation. You remember the tsunami? This was a long time back, despite the fact that India's east coast was also badly hit. We went out of our way as far as Sri Lanka, the Maldives are concerned. And if I recall right, all the way up to all the way up to Indonesia, in fact. We've similarly also,
East Africa, the East African
coast. We've done it not only in East Africa. We've also done it to the country on our west. When they were hit by those huge torrential storms, we did not let this come in the way, and we were there to help them. Perhaps they were not even in a position to do it for themselves. This is India for you. Again, let me stress, a country which believes truly in Vasudhaiva Kutumbam. We really believe it is one world, we are one family, and more than anything else, we are there to do what we can for the service of humanity. It's our motto, and we have always pushed this fact. That it works well for diplomacy, very good. But it is India for you in the world.
Just looking at another neighbor, Bhutan, Ambassador, my colleague and deputy editor of StratNews Global, Parul Chandra, had sent our ambassador there, Ruchira Kamboj, a couple of questions on not just the vaccines, but how India had helped during the pandemic and the time-tested and multidimensional relationship between India and Bhutan. This is Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj.
Well, you're aware that India shares a time-tested relationship with Bhutan, and this relationship is based on mutual respect, mutual trust, and mutual sensitivity. In that vein, as you know, Bhutan was the first among neighbours to receive the COVID-19 vaccine, and I think going forward, Bhutan's request will be prioritised with the government of India. Well, India has been a loyal friend to Bhutan during the course of the pandemic. We have ensured the uninterrupted supply of essential and non-essential commodities to Bhutan. We have opened 5 new trade routes, 2 of which are riverine routes. We have facilitated the export of Bhutanese agri-products. We have encouraged tie-ups between the Bhutanese private sector and Indian supermarket chains. On request, we have set up a plant quarantine officer at Jaigaon, which will further facilitate bilateral trade. We have signed a concession agreement on a new hydroelectric power project, the Khulongchu project. We have also kept the development assistance ship afloat by expediting the release of rupees 5 billion, which will help Bhutan adapt to COVID-19 times. But not just on the economic side, I would say in some of the newer areas of cooperation between our 2 countries. We have recently sent 4 Bhutanese engineers to train at ISRO Bangalore. Our 2 countries will jointly launch a satellite, a Bhutanese satellite in 2021. At the highest political levels, there has been interaction between our 2 countries. There have been 2 telephone conversations, and there has also been a virtual meeting. And finally, of course, we have launched the RuPay card phase 2 in Bhutan during the course of the pandemic. You would recall that the first phase was launched during Prime Minister Modi's visit to Bhutan in August 2019. With the launch of the second phase now, there will be complete interoperability between the 2 countries. So I would say there's been lots that's been done between India and Bhutan during the course of the pandemic.
Mr. Puri, the double whammy that the world has faced, of course, India is part of that in terms of the pandemic and then the effects on the economy, on people. So it's not just the vaccine, it's not that, as you were pointing out, HCQ, paracetamol, PPEs. It is to help those who are in need, especially our neighbors, in continuously developing the economy during the pandemic.
Amitabh, you are very right. Let me take you to Nepal. You mentioned that the last year, talking about 2020, there were several political challenges between India and Nepal, and I won't go into those. But right throughout the COVID pandemic, despite the lockdown which we had to enforce and which the Nepalese had to enforce, we ensured that trade relations, economic relations, and development partnership relations remained paramount and running. There was no disruption in trade. There was no disruption in the development partnerships. I have seen the same thing being done with us, with all our countries in our neighborhood. You know, the wheels of the economy have to continue to keep moving because this pandemic also relies on resilience. And resilience certainly demands that the economy is in good shape, despite all the problems that we face. So a great deal of investment by all countries, India leading the way, has gone into the health pandemic, the health emergency that we have all faced. But at the same time, if you don't keep the wheels of the economy greased, you can have several other problems that come about as a result of it. And we have done well, and it has been our fullest endeavor to ensure that our neighborhood, which is intrinsically linked to the Indian economy, remains equally charged and fueled in this endeavor of theirs and ours, a common endeavor.
Master, many would dispute the economic impact in Nepal when there was that blockade, but as you said, we're not dealing with that on this subject. But again, now Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and if I move towards the west, of course, Pakistan is not involved because we all know why that's so. The first batch, I think, of Chinese vaccines are expected there on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. But further to the west, we have another close friend there, Afghanistan. And we've been helping them continuously. Again, it's not just medical related, but when we saw that food could have been in short supply because of the effect on the economy, 75,000 metric tons of wheat was sent through Chabahar to Afghanistan. Before I get you to comment on that, let me in fact get in a close friend and the outgoing Chargé D'Affaires of Afghanistan, Tahir Qadiry. I spoke to him earlier on how India had assisted in the last 1 year or so during the pandemic, and the vaccines which are now expected in Kabul as well.
Revi, I think we were one of the first countries that India considered including us in that recipient. And as policy of the neighbours first policy. So we were very privileged actually to be included there, and we were promised 500,000 doses of Indian-made vaccines that we are very much hoping that it will arrive in Kabul quite soon, because everyone is looking forward to it. Well, the Afghan government and the Ministry of Public Health, they took some really good and bold measures to fight this COVID. And of course, you know, we had some really hard days in the past, but the good thing was that people were cooperating, and there was a lot of awareness programs around, like wearing masks, social distancing, and all that were in place. Like while all the countries, they had put, the restrictions back in Afghanistan, the same thing was in place. The current situation is not that bad, and I think I'm not an expert to talk about that, but I think people give a lot of reasons for that. They say that Afghanistan has got a very young population is number one, that's why they are not really suffering really hard like other countries. And also the plans and the precautions that the Afghan government took well in advance, I think it also helped the country to prepare itself for fighting the COVID. Well, Revi Saab, that has been actually promised and pledged by our great Indian allies and colleagues. In fact, we are very much looking forward. As I said, it's only to do with the logistics, which has now been resolved. And we are very much hoping that the vaccinations, they will be shipped to Afghanistan quite soon, because we have been speaking with our Indian colleagues back here in Delhi, and in Afghanistan, our colleagues have been speaking with the embassy there. And I think the clearance is there now. So we look forward to that. And regarding training the doctors, this has also been actually the online kind of training opportunity has been extended by our Indian colleagues. During the really hard days of COVID, Revi, I was here in Delhi when, you know, India extended its hand to help Afghanistan fight this pandemic. So I quite remember that in those hard days, Afghanistan was one of the first countries to receive the critical drugs to fight COVID. So I was actually involved in that project when the Indian government sent, you know, so many thousands of chloroquine and paracetamols, and also for fighting, you know, in case if Afghanistan suffered like food insufficiency. So they also helped 75,000 tons of wheat that we sent it through Chabahar port. So the Afghan people will always appreciate that. And of course, that is, you know, what they expected from a brotherly country, India. And the same for the same cause and for the same reason, because this combat also showed us that, you know, apart from the hard days that we have all been suffering, I think it brought the nations together. And, you know, of course, the two nations, the two brotherly Indian and Afghanistan nations, of course, they have always been together. And especially in regards of fighting this pandemic, I think they have been very closely cooperating with each other. And, you know, Afghans back home really appreciate what they have received. And for the vaccinations as well, they really look forward to receiving the Made in India vaccines quite soon. And also, let me add this, Revi, that yesterday our Public Health Ministry announced that they are very much hoping that within the next 6 months, they hope to vaccinate as many people as possible in Afghanistan. And I think they have also received pledges from other international organizations, like I think from the World Bank, from the from the Asian Development Banks, and of course, from India, which at the next stages as well, we have been told that in case if Afghanistan needs it, we will definitely call on India for further assistance. Thank you so much, Revi, and thanks to you, and again, thanks to the Indian government. We really look forward to further strengthening, our relationship, and of course, collaborate on other aspects as well.
Ambassador Puri, now, like we said, it is over a year now of talking about Afghanistan's case here. Now, it was the HCQ, paracetamol, PPEs, but the vaccines expected to reach there soon. The logistics problems there. So there's online training of health workers. Afghanistan is, of course, a country where, you would, like in many parts of rural India, the transportation, say, of the vaccine and cold storage, if it was needed, those kind of chains or supply chains would also need to be, India would need to give a helping hand there as well.
India and Afghanistan have a civilizational link. Yeah. We are countries which are bound together in a very special kind of friendship. And you have seen this not just during the COVID 1 year, but right from the very beginning. We have been there as partners in development, partners even in bringing about peace and stability in Afghanistan. So COVID is such a special case. The question of India not going more than the extra mile insofar as friendly Afghanistan is concerned did not arise. And I am so glad, and what should I say? It was so natural that we would have risen to the occasion. And obviously, it meant a lot of things. It's not only surmounting institutional transportation hassles, which get caused as a result of our Western neighbor invariably causing problems of transport and so on. But you mentioned something very interesting, which is online training, etc. So, Amitabh, I want to use this as a segue to bring another facet of India into this. India is certainly a great force for good. But let me also underline the aspect of force. India's abilities, its capabilities, the fact that we are the 5th largest economy in the world, that we have built a huge industrial infrastructure, that we have this great pharmacy of the world in our country, are all facets that the world is now recognizing. And for me, it's not just that we are in the forefront of doing humanitarian assistance. Yes, we always have been. I would be loath if I didn't mention that even insofar as Haiti is concerned, when they had the earthquake, we were in the forefront of making a financial contribution. So our contribution, our willingness to help is always there. But our abilities to be able to help are some things that the world is seeing, not just in our neighborhood, today all over the world. Mind you, vaccines from India, some of it through our aid programs will go in our neighborhood, many other developing countries across the world. But so much of it will go through pure commercial contracts all over the world. I dare say from Latin America to the Pacific, from the north to the south. This is what India is, a huge player in the world. And this is a great testament to that too.
Africa coming up, and of course, Morocco has already got commercial export of the vaccines, but Africa on much larger scale, millions. As you mentioned, Pacific Island countries. You've gone to Brazil as well. I think in West Asia, Bahrain has also got, as you pointed out. This is just the early days. Once the commercial agreements start coming in as well. But how do you look at what's being called vaccine nationalism? I mean, it has about 5 vaccines that it is also in the process of either developing or it's already. Go ahead, Ambassador.
Amitabh, my first point I want to make to you is, remember, we can keep talking about this vaccine nationalism, etc. I'll make my comments on it. But first, remember, there are only 5 parts of the world which are actually players in the game. Obviously, the United States, with at least 2 well-known vaccines which have been developed there. Obviously, Europe, we talk about AstraZeneca, etc. Russia and China. And there is India. And our vaccines, which have been developed here locally, and I'm not just talking about Covishield, which is made by the Serum Institute, but perhaps developed elsewhere. Of course, they would not have been able to become such a large global player if the Serum Institute was not there standing with them. But even if I leave that aside, look at Covaxin and look at some other things which might soon be coming. This is India's prowess. It is a country which is in the business of being the pharmacy of the world. And we have really done well. Now, naturally, there is a certain element in any country in the world of promoting its own. Are the Europeans not doing it? Are we not seeing all these tussles between US products and European products? The European Union, the UK would like to. Everybody has this particular thing, and we should accept it. We as a country need to develop a certain kind of self-confidence in our own products, in our own developments, and simply not look at the fact that, oh, has this got approval elsewhere, then it's okay and safe. No, our own people have developed the capabilities. We are good. The world is buying our products. And we need to become more self-assured about it. I'm sure this will come about. You know, we are relatively new to this game. Corona pandemic has shown to our people that we are capable of doing it ourselves. We used to import PPEs. Now we are one of the largest manufacturers and exporters of PPE. Our people have internalized this. Similarly with vaccines, this is exactly what will happen. It also gives our companies an opportunity to be in this particular business. After all, you have to do certain amounts of development. So I don't want to overplay these things. These are important, and I buy the arguments of those who talk in terms of safety, in terms of all these protocols. I understand where they come from. But I do believe that we are very much on the right track, and we are taking things forward, not just for today and for the corona pandemic, but for the future, because we need to be prepared that with globalization now there to stay, these kinds of issues, including pandemics, are not going to go away.
Not going to go away. And since you were talking about the vaccines, both the Serum Institute in Pune and the Bharat Biotech, it's not just the Chinese, it's not just the Oxford variant as well. Russian and Sputnik V. In fact, the ambassador in Moscow, the Venkatesh Varma, recently spoke to Russian journalists about how India was handling the pandemic, how it is helping countries out, and also on Sputnik V.
Many of you are aware that Sputnik vaccine is in a very advanced stage of regulatory approvals in India. The second phase has been completed. The third phase trials have begun. And as soon as these trials are completed with the necessary regulatory approvals, we envisage a major rolling out of Sputnik vaccines in India using the Indian production capacities for India, for Russia, and for the entire world.
Excuse me. In fact, Ambassador Varma is also, he got a jab of the Sputnik V, I think maybe last week as well. So it's, even if it's something developed by another country here, Russia, he's talking about the production facilities that could possibly be involved in not just providing it for Russia, for India, but for the world if all the regulatory work is actually culminated.
Amitabh, you're absolutely right. But I think the far better and most well-known example in the world is the Serum Institute. It is the largest manufacturing facility for some kind of vaccines in the world. If AstraZeneca is going to go places, and now I believe the Serum Institute is starting work on yet another vaccine, Novaxin 2. If these are going to reach the world, and let me tell you, we are talking about 9 billion people. We have 1 billion plus in India itself. If we need to reach so many people, the amount of vaccines that need to be produced is simply stupendous. And till such time as the giant manufacturing capacities of a country like India, there we'll start grinding. The world is going to take an enormously long time. We are therefore critical. And that is why you hear the UN Secretary General say that the greatest asset in the world is India's production capacities. I think we in India should be proud. We should internalize this. As I said, We are a force for good. I would stress both the factors of force and good. This is what we bring together.
As you're pointing out, Ambassador, I mean, this is just, if we look at how it's been progressing, it's the beginning of the end. Because as you pointed out, billions of people across the world. I mean, you look at the US itself, their projections now say that they possibly won't reach herd immunity till the end of the year. The UK and the EU, you pointed out how there was a battle going on. But what about the developing countries? There are reports suggesting that up to 84 countries would not get to herd immunity by 2024. So there's a huge amount of effort that's needed here, right?
Well, the Director General of WHO was on record a few days back saying that only a few countries are monopolizing the vaccine. Now, I fully understand the sentiment from where he comes. And there is no doubt that developing countries, and let us remember, there are developing countries across the globe, fairly far even from seaports and from good infrastructure. And really, the need is there for everyone. This is a virus which does not discriminate. It doesn't say that you are rich, I will leave you, or you are poor and I will go after you. It goes after everyone. And because of globalization, perhaps the first time in the world, not even the Spanish flu reached every country in the world, reached every corner of the globe, and we need to reach every country and every corner with the antidote, and we need to do it quick. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind about that. And for that, India is going to play the critical role. Let me use this opportunity also to say something else. A country with whom there is tremendous contestation. There's been lots of issues in the recent months. That is China. What is the world's understanding of China, the source of the virus? What will be the world's understanding of India, the antidote? It makes me very proud, very happy.
And we've touched on all our neighbors. We've touched on the extended neighborhood, Mauritius, Seychelles. I think a perfect way to kind of end this discussion would be to go to the Mauritian foreign minister, who displays his chaste Hindi and, of course, the close ties with India and Mauritius that are exemplified by what he's saying.
We say thank you again to India. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद भारत माता के लिए, प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी के लिए. यह एक बड़ा दिन है और हम आशा करते हैं कि दिन और दिन बाद वो ये हमारा दोस्ती जो है ये बहुत और मजबूत बनेगा और इंडिया को हम कहते हैं थैंक यू, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
You're there, Ambassador Puri, but I think your last answer also exemplified the whole process when you said China was the source of the coronavirus and India the antidote. Again, thank you for your insight, your experience, and your time, Ambassador Puri.
Thank you very much, Amitabh. All the best to you.
It was a pleasure having you on StratNews Global. Just a reminder for all our subscribers, do click on that bell icon on YouTube to get notifications for videos like this one. You can also follow us on our social media handles on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And do help us, do support us financially. Also, if you like our kind of analysis from an Indian perspective, you can do that by going onto our website. You've been watching Talking Point on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh.